Hey guys, so welcome back to the BMW Blog Podcast, Season 2, Episode 6. I'm once again joined by Nate, and today we have a few interesting topics. Hey Nate, how are you?
Good. How you doing today, Horatio?
Doing well. Staying away from the cold in Chicago. I did some charging test actually the other day and it was quite cold outside, so trying to stay inside today. All right, so what do we have today? Quite a few topics, right?
Yeah, we got a few things we can talk about here.
You want to start with the big hitter?
Sure, yeah.
So let's maybe outline them. So we're going to have the BMW Z4 M40i, the 6-speed manual. So we want to talk about that. In the previous episode, we kind of hinted that we drove a very special car, or that I drove a special car. I couldn't really tell you which one it was. We're under an embargo, but now we can talk about that driving experience and what's coming down the line with the Z4. Then we can cover also, I have a BMW iX M60 long-term press car, and I did a DC fast charge the other day, and I've learned some new things about the charging curve in the iX, the latest update. So we're going to share some thoughts on that. Then Nate, I guess you're going to tell us about your 760i press car that you had as well. Maybe we talk about the technology in that. And then we're going to finish with something different maybe this time around. We're going to talk about the Tesla Cybertruck. It's a big topic. And then we can see if that has any impact on BMW, or if BMW should even consider a luxury pickup truck.
Never know.
All right, so let me ask you directly. What do you think about a Z4 M40i with a 6-speed manual?
Oh, man. When you told me about it, back when we were down there testing, it sounds like the perfect setup, right? Fun little roadster, convertible. That engine's perfect, especially if paired with a 6-speed, which I think will just be perfect combination. I think that car will be a ton of fun. You got in it. What was your initial impressions?
Yes, I mean, it was a fairly short drive. So I think it was only about 45 minutes. So it wasn't too long, but it was enough to get a feel of what the car it's like. And I guess the moment that I saw the car, I liked the fact that it was in a very different color. So I remember seeing this car in a parking lot, and I was like, "What's that?" And that was the Z4 M40i 6-speed manual. He had a San Remo green frozen, so frozen San Remo green.
Amazing.
Yeah, it looks really good actually in real life. I mean, honestly, the color just pops so nice. I'm not sure how easy it is to maintain, and we always have discussion about frozen colors, but I'm sure there'll be some other color choices from what I heard, but. Yeah, just get into the car. Essentially, it's really the same Z4 as before as far as the design. No major changes. Inside, it looks exactly the same, so I don't expect that. There might be some maybe unique trims and leather combinations, but I guess we'll find out. I believe at the end of January, so I guess start of communication is the last week of January, so we'll know more about pricing options, availability, and all of that. But just driving the car, I mean, immediately I noticed the shore shifter that's on the Z4. So we've talked about the 6-speed manuals in BMWs. They're not great. They're okay. BMW never really put in the effort to improve them over time. So I was kind of shocked that they actually took the time to improve it in the Z4. I'm expecting to see that in the M2 maybe. But yeah, just the shore shifter immediately, I noticed that. And then when I started to roll the gears, just a lot easier, right? It's not that vague rubbery feeling that you're getting. They're very precise. It was just really easy to shift gears with this car. I always struggled with my...
That's good to hear.
Yeah. I mean, I always struggled... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, because, in the Z4, you sit down a little bit lower, your hand's a little bit higher. You want that to be short, a shorter throw, a little bit more, clickier and slot in a little bit better.
Yeah. Have you driven a 6-speed manual recently in a BMW?
Just the G87 M2 that we tested.
Right. So do you always feel like you can never get really smooth shifts in it? Like can be line from like first to second?
First to second has always been just a terrible shift for BMW. Even way back to my E46, first to second, like it is terrible to get first to second. I don't know why, but yeah, you're right. I think with the G87 and same thing with the previous M2, it's a little rubbery.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they fixed that in the Z4 M40i. So hopefully it was not a placebo effect, that the car had on me. But honestly, it just felt a lot smoother to shift from first to second, and then, from second to third, and so on and so forth. So a really, really nice transmission. Of course, I had to ask, was there any influence from the Toyota Supra? And I mean, the answer that I got from the product manager, of course, we're going to talk to the engineers in the future and try to get more information about that, was the fact that, of course, yes, we looked at the Supra, we saw that people like that transmission. But at the same time, I remember talking to the product manager from Germany earlier this year when I drove the Z4 M40i with the automatic. We're talking about the Supra and all of that. And he said that when Supra came to BMW to build a car, basically, they said we want a different kind of feel in the transmissions that we have for our Supra to kind of match the character of the Toyota, not the BMW. And BMW was happy at that time because they wanted to have kind of two different products, so they not be like identical in many ways, the
Mm-hmm.
way they shift and the way they drive. But I guess now they've realized that the manual in the Supra, it's really good, and I guess they learned some lessons from that. They did tell me that it's still different than in the Supra. I don't know what they mean by that. They didn't go into a lot of details, but I guess they talked about the linkage and the bushings and all of that being different. But I will have to drive again the Supra. I only drove it a little bit and briefly. I think Nico drove it a lot last year, and I have to drive it
Mm-hmm.
back to kind of see what they feel like, if they're comparable or not. But overall, yeah, absolutely an improvement when it comes to the six-speed manual. I also hope that they're gonna bring that to maybe the M2 and the M3 and the M4. It will be a shame not to use that transmission, maybe in the next few years, because they still have an M2 and M3 and M4 running for the next few years. But other than that, I mean, the car it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think paired with that B58 engine, it's just that thing has so much good low end torque on it that that car is just going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it was a rocket. Honestly, I forgot what it feels like to have a lightish BMW to drive. I mean, I drove it earlier this year with the 8-speed automatic, and I loved it. I even said that this might be the best driving BMW today, and this one just reinforced that thought that I had. Honestly, it's just different. I mean, all these cars are crazy fast, the M2, the M3s, the M4s, the M5s. It's just not the same feeling. You sit low, like you said, you feel connected to the
Yep.
car at all time. It's that cocoon driver-oriented feeling around you. You have the iDrive 7 in it with a small screen. It's not overwhelming. So the entire experience was really, really nice. Of course, the driving experience, it's also a lot better than, I would say, than the regular M40i, because they took the rear axle steering from the M240i, which I know that car, it's really, really nice to drive. And also the M-Active differential from that car, it's in this one.
Nice.
I do have some questions for them, like what's the difference between the M differential that's currently in the M40i and what's the difference between the one from the M240i? So I'm actually very curious to find that out when they're ready to talk more about this, because they said that they're different. So I don't know what that means. But
Yeah, I wonder if it's just how it engages things like that might be different.
exactly.
Um, when you talk about shifting though, how's the clutch feel?
Yeah, so see, that's the thing. The clutch is not as heavy as I feel like it's in my 1M, for example, or the M2s. So it was a lot easier to, like I said, to get those smooth shifts. It's not tiring. Sometimes driving my 1M or even the M2, I feel like I'm constantly tired. Using that clutch just feels heavy and springy in many ways. But this one is just a lot smoother. So I don't know if they've done any improvements to that, or maybe just a combination of the new transmission with the engine and all of that that felt different. So I have to see. I mean, I still have a lot of questions. Honestly, it was just a really brief drive. I also want to talk about the suspension with them a little bit more, because they did tell me that they revised the dampers, but I want to know more what the mechanical changes are. I mean, I understand the software changes. That's easier to do than the hardware one. So I want to know if they've done any improvements on that area as well. And I guess the one thing that I noticed immediately by driving the car was the fact that it has a staggered setup. So we got 20-inch in the back, 285, I believe, and then 19 front, 255 to 65. But because of that, you're losing a little bit of the balance of the car.
Yep.
So it's a little bit more tail happy, which is nice, because that's kind of what I want in that car, because it's lighter and all of that. So I did feel the rear end stepping out a little bit. I was driving with Nick Gerstern, the product manager, and I pushed the car at some point, and I saw him, kind of like being worried for a second. But I had all the menu controls on, and I knew that the car it's gonna solve that difficult angle that I took, basically. But yeah, just a fantastic drive, honestly. I saw the reaction actually on some forums. Of course, I saw it on our social media and comments, but I read some forums, and people are willing to buy the car. They even said that because of our review, they put their deposit down, which is like, wow, that's kind of cool. But
That's awesome.
yeah, I know that was interesting. But it's funny how many people are interested in that car, and I saw some people willing to cancel their M2 orders to go for the Z4 M40i.
I mean,
So
it doesn't really kind of surprise me because after driving the M2 this summer, I mean, it's a big car now. It's big, it's heavy. It's more an M3 than it is an M2.
mhm.
So like you were saying, it's
Yeah,
smaller and lighter. That's what people are wanting. That enthusiast drivers want. How
yeah,
many are going to buy? Like you said, hopefully it's good to hear that a few of them have already kind of put a down payment because that's how we keep getting manuals is people do buy them. So hopefully they go out and
yes,
buy a few more.
yeah. So that's the thing, right? Everybody talks about. I just actually made this joke on social media that everybody talks about wagons. We want wagons. We want
No
manuals.
one buys them.
Exactly. And then they drive off with the next five, or something like that. So I'm like, okay, this is your chance right now. BMW gave you something. It's more just than just a 6-speed manual. So they've done quite a few upgrades to the car. So you're not just getting a 6-speed manual with the same package. So now you have a reason to actually buy the car. It's actually not that expensive either. I think it's the entire package is somewhere around $3,500 over the base MSRP. So that's about $70,000, I guess, for the car, which is not bad if you compare these to maybe to a Porsche Boxster, which is a lot more expensive. So decent price, I guess, for today's standards. Maybe a few years ago that would have been a $50,000-$60,000 car, but that's changed. So I'm actually very, very interested to see how many people will actually buy the car. It's not limited by any means. They said that they're going to produce as many as they can. I think the production ends in sometime spring or somewhere 2026. Production begins in March 2024. So 2 years. U.S. market, it's the main market for the car. They even the product team from here, I said in my review, they flew to Germany to test the Z4 a few times to make sure that it's the 6-speed transmission is refined for what the US customers usually expect and want and all of that. So really a car tailored for the US market in many, many, many ways. I think it will be offered in certain markets. I think the UK will get it, Germany will get it as well, but not everyone. Like I think Australia said that they're not going to bring the car. So we'll have to see what's the global demand, and I'm definitely interested in the US demand for the car. So it'll be quite interesting.
Yeah, have you seen or have they said how many regular Z4s they've sold so far or how that's going for sales?
So I think I read somewhere that I think for the year, I think they only saw like 1,400 Z4s or something like that, like really, really low number.
Yeah, I
So
remember I think it's always historically only been a few thousand per
yeah,
year. So
yeah. So
that's about right on par. But this gives that option, I think, probably the best setup. I mean, if you're wanting to get a Z4, I mean, this combination is just going to make it so much fun.
yeah. And it's a future classic. I mean, there is absolutely no doubt that this will be a future classic. It might take 20, 30 years, but it will be a future classic. I mean, I constantly see the Z lineup that BMW USA has in their classic fleet. and
Yep.
and I remember seeing them even 10 years ago when I was not that excited about them, but now I am. So I feel like this will be kind of the same way. I mean, it's really the last of its kind. There is no other Z4 roadster planned, even on the electric drivetrain. So if there will be one, it's not going to come for the next, I mean, probably 7, 8, 10 years, probably. So after 2030, so there's nothing planned until 2030 for sure. And if it will come, it'll probably be all electric. So completely, completely different than what we get today. And this is the car to get, honestly. I mean, I don't
Yeah, the
see any
Z
faults.
cars, they always age well. I mean, you
Yeah.
can look at some of the original Z3s and Z4s, and they still look good today, right?
Yeah.
So, and this current generation, I saw that frozen green, and I was like, wow, that looks amazing. So
Yeah.
I think it's just another car that's just going to continue to age well.
Yeah, this is a car that it's kind of hard to find it any faults, right? Of course, when we drive the car, I'm sure we'll find something there. But if you look at the design, even when the car came out, people were like, "Oh, that's not a good design." But now looking back and seeing all the other BMW products that came out, this is a really nice car. I mean, it's a good
Yeah,
looking car. It's spacious. It's got a lot of cargo space compared to what was before. The interior, now you're not getting the iDrive 8 and all the big screens, so you have all the physical buttons, very analog. I mean, this is really what people want. So I mean, truly, this is exactly the car that everybody's been asking for quite some time. Of course, there's some pundits that said, well, it would be nice if it was a S58 engine in it. And I remember, asking the product manager earlier this year. We talked with some other journalists as well, and everybody asked the question why there is no Z4M or an S58 in that car. And apparently, it was more of a packaging thing where the
Mm-hmm.
entire front firewall will have to be changed. And I guess it was a costly thing more than anything else. So it's probably a cost thing. Then we can do it. So, I mean, I'm sure they can do it, but it would have probably been very expensive for a very low volume car. And this car feels like an M car. I mean, even with the 8-speed automatic, it really felt like an M car more than anything
Yeah,
else.
it's gonna feel a lot like the cars because it's just the power to weight ratio, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I can see how they could not fit an M engine in there. I mean, you look at the front of all the M cars now. There's a reason why there's all those grills and things like that. There's cooling and airflow,
Mhm.
and the Z4 just doesn't quite have that space. So yeah, add in firewall and the packaging. I can see why it doesn't fit, but I think the tuning and that engine, we all love that engine.
Mhm.
I think it's just going to be a great package.
Yeah, so I think when spring comes, I think we might have to go to either BMW Performance Center, West Coast or East Coast, and put a car on the track, because I feel like that would be a really good test. Because now we drove the 1M on track, we drove the M2 CS, the previous generation, the M2, the M3. So now we have really good comparison base, and we can really give an educated answer. Is this better than some of the M cars that are available today? So I think that's going to be a fun trip that we have to plan.
Yeah, that'd be a fun one. Definitely.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the Z4 M40i. Honestly, the response has been extremely positive. I've seen some Toyota forums picking up the news as well. So I guess they might even pick up some customers from Toyota, which is great for BMW. So this might be a successful product. But I'm still curious to see after 2 years how many they've actually sold. So I'll make a note to follow up in 2 years and say, okay, let's take a look now and see if people really, you know, put their money where their mouth is, or whatever that expression
Exactly.
is. So yeah, so that's that topic. All right. What's next? You want to talk about your 760i?
Yeah, 760. So it's been a little while since I drove that. I drove that earlier this year. But you asked recently, to wrap up kind of what were the best vehicles I drove this year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's on there. I definitely put that on there. I only picked two, and that's on there. And I think the reason for it is, a lot of times in the past with like 7 Series or luxury BMWs, people would always get and be like, oh, this is nice. Like it's definitely, a little bit more luxurious.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is the first time that I've had people get in and go, wow, like this is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, every person that got into it or, saw it go by was just like, that is amazing. Like, that is a fantastic interior. Like, it looks luxurious, feels luxurious. Like, this is where I want to be. I think I got roped into driving a few times to dinner because it's just like, well, Nate's got the 7. We're taking that, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Um, so that's the first time I think I've ever really had that happen in a BMW for me, to where it wasn't all about the driving performance. It was all about the luxury, right? And it was always fun to get all those people in there and go, well, it's still a BMW, and put my foot down and get it to go because it's still got people surprised. But
Mm-hmm.
it was a great car.
Yeah. So what did you like about the interior?
I like that. It seems like no one, not a single seat was like neglected, right? So
Okay.
like if you're in the passenger seat, it wasn't just a focus on the passenger back seat. A lot of times it's just that passenger back seat gets the focus for these like luxury sedans.
Mm-hmm.
But even like the passenger seat, all of them felt like they were special places to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the great part about it. All the little details. I know a lot of people have given like all the crystal controls a little bit of flack because it shines light around it, but I thought that was really neat. I thought the moods with all the different lightings and stuff. Everyone who got into that car basically loved all those little details and all the fun little things it could do. It was just very well thought out, very clean. I know with like some of the previous 7 Series, some of the things were a little bit more confusing. Like there's just lots of steps and lots of buttons to jump through. And I think with like the My modes, I think they simplified that to where like anyone can get in and just be like, oh, theaters. And they had that intuitiveness of what it would be like. So it was really cool to just how all of those features interacted with each other, all the way
Yeah.
down to like the seats and the massaging seats and the nice leather. Like it all just worked cohesively together.
Did you think, or do you think that the theater screen it's more of a gimmick or something that's useful in the car?
Um, I went back and forth on that. Like I do feel it was a little bit of a gimmick. But I did have people watch things back there, I think the gimmick part of it was maybe it just this there's what's the word for it? The aspect ratio,
Hmm.
So like you have this incredibly wide screen, but I don't think it was fully optimized. Maybe later on down the road with software updates, they might be able to do this. But like, if you notice, like if you watch something, it's just in the middle, so like the sides of the screens weren't being utilized, and it felt like I had a couple people back there, and they brought up the point like, "Hey, can I have two screens, like one on the right side, one on the left side, and two headphones being ran?" So like right now, I think it's a little gimmicky because, like I said, it's not. I don't think fully optimized as best as it can be, but I think in the future, after a few attempts at it, maybe some software
Hmm.
updates, it could be not gimmicky.
I don't recall exactly, but I'm pretty sure that you can optimize. You can actually change the aspect ratio, so you can go from a 16 by 9 to a 32 by something. So you can actually change the format more squarish, more rectangle, and all of that. It also comes down probably to which streaming service you're using, and if
Mm-hmm.
the actual content has been shot in that particular aspect ratio. But I think you can customize that. I know for sure that you can't do a split screen, so you can't do the split screen yet. But yeah, the other thing I think is definitely customizable. From my point of view, I feel like it's a good addition for the car if you do like a long road trip. Clearly, what I would like to see in that car is really using the iDrive operating system um, in the back as well. So right now they have two different operating systems. You have the Fire TV that operates the back, and then
Mm-hmm.
you have the front. It's the iDrive. So it's a little bit confusing because you're not able to control anything from the front to the back. And I think they might change that in the future, where basically everything goes to the BMW operating system, and then they just have different apps on top of it, and that might make the experience a little bit more interesting. I have had a chance to really test the video conferencing and all of that. I think that's a cool feature, but I guess you have to activate the T-Mobile 5G plan, so we haven't done that. But that'll be interesting to actually see because that's cool. I mean, do some video calls. I, I find that to be maybe even more interesting than actually watching content on it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you are those one of those executives that gets driven around town, and it's something that could be definitely be utilized. I did notice that there was even a camera on the front side to where you could pop in and see, or sorry, not the front side, but the front seats to where you can do that type of stuff as well. So
Yeah.
I do like that integration. I think that's definitely looking forward, and being able to better be future proof on some things, which it's always Achilles heels with tech and cars, is that it feels quickly outdated. So I feel like a lot of that stuff that they put into this is definitely looking forward to where it could be won't feel old in the near future.
What did you think about the V8 engine? Do you feel like it's underpowered? It's got enough power for the car size and all of that?
I thought it's about right. It's about what I was expecting. It wasn't mind boggling, but it was still very good. Got up to speed really quickly.
Hmm.
It was very smooth.
It is smooth, yeah.
It's super smooth.
Hmm.
Um, I don't wouldn't say Rolls Royce esque, but it
Hmm.
definitely leaned more that way than traditional BMW, and then I think that's goes into that whole packaging of everything that I was talking about. It just seems like everything is so working together, and one of those is that that engine. You don't you definitely will doesn't feel underpowered at all. But like I said, it's not mind boggling, but it's smooth, it's quick, it gets up to speed on the freeways incredibly easily. Um, Kind of like almost on like the EV side of things, where you're just like, oh wow, I'm going really fast and didn't even notice. So
Yeah,
um, I think it's just a great all round luxury car right now.
gotcha. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Rolls Royce, and I know that with the fourth generation Ghost, there were a lot of platform sharing between the 7 Series and the Ghost. And then Rolls-Royce went completely on their own platform. It's called the Architecture of Luxury, so really a bespoke platform for their own products. And it's the same case right now. They're completely different platforms, the 7 Series and the Rolls-Royce Ghost. But I can see that there are some lessons learned. They've been applied
Mm-hmm.
from the Ghost into the 7 Series. I think even the planner suspension system, there's some lessons there that went into the 7 Series because it does have that more floaty, more luxurious, driving aspect, and definitely the smoothness of the engine as well. So even though they're completely, different products, and I guess they run the companies kind of differently or completely separately in many, many ways. Of course, they do share, knowledge and all of that. But yeah, it just, like you said, very, very smooth engine. Sometimes even driving like on the highway, I did a really long trip with the car, and I felt like I was in an i7. Really, I was some point it was so well
Yeah.
isolated from the outside the sound, the cabin. I was like, is this a nice 7? Is this a 7 Series? So that was really, really nice.
Yeah, it's a great place to be for a long road trip, definitely. It's just so comfortable. And yeah, you're right. At some point, like it feels when you're in comfort mode, it was just whisper quiet. It was
Mhm.
super nice.
Yeah, let's see what happens with the facelift. I guess there is a facelift coming out soon. I think 2025. Yeah, it should be 2025 probably. And I think they're gonna change the design a little bit. Apparently, it's a major facelift, so it's not gonna be just lights and that. So they might change a little bit of the front end as well. So I'm kind of curious to see, because that's really the only complaint with the 7 Series today. People just complain about the front end design, but other than that, it's probably the best 7 Series they've ever made. It is closer to the S class than ever before. It's a really good overall product, but it's just a front end design that's polarizing, and not everybody likes it. I like it in certain colors, but not in all of them. But we
Yeah.
did see a cool two-tone 7 Series or i7 test fest. It was like a
Hmm.
violet and black or something like that. It was beautiful. I don't remember the color name, but it was so nice.
Yeah. It's every like I said, everyone that I showed it to ended up loving it. No one even like. I think the people complaining about the looks are definitely people probably not even buying it though. It's a lot
True.
of those enthusiasts.
Yeah, exactly true.
Because yeah, literally, I didn't get anyone like oh, that front end. Like it
Hmm.
never happened when I
Yeah,
had it.
yeah,
Everyone was just kind of like, wow, that's amazing. So I kind of scoff at that a little because it's probably one of those things that just you know it's an enthusiast gripe.
yeah. Exactly. I always say this, I'm not a typical 7 Series customer. I don't think that even if I were to spend that much money on a car that I will buy the 7 Series, I'll probably buy maybe a M8 Grand Coupe or an 8 Series Grand Coupe
Hmm.
or something like that. It's more of my style, but I can't really find it any faults really with the overall product. I think they really stepped up the game when it comes to the luxury aspect of the car.
Yeah, and I think you brought up something that popped into my mind when you said it was like the best one built, and I just keep thinking back to that previous one, and that one was definitely probably very gimmicky.
Yeah,
It was the first with all the gesture controls and just like a bunch of they just threw everything in the kitchen sink in there, right?
yeah,
Like it had so many new features and so many things, and none of it was just here's a whole bunch of new tech, you know
yeah.
and it felt like they were just trying whatever they could put into it, they could put into it. Where this time around, it was like, well, okay, that doesn't quite work. Let's put it this way, and kind of learn from that to where they've kind of made it into what it is. And yeah, I agree. It's definitely probably the best luxury sedan that they've built. It's fantastic.
What I liked about the previous generation though was the M760 Li and I, the V12.
Hmm.
So I was searching actually earlier this year for one of the last builds. I mean, they had this 12 units run for the US with the V12, and I was trying to find one of those, the last edition, to kind of do a test drive on it because I still love that V12. So I was hoping to get one in, but it
Yeah,
hasn't happened
it's a
yet.
fantastic engine.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on. Let's talk about some electric stuff because I guess that's kind of topic in 2023 and moving forward. So last episode, I guess I talked about my BMW iX M60 long-term press car, which for people that don't know, it just means that I get to keep the car for a few months versus a week, which gives me the opportunity to really test the car as a normal customer and really play with all the features. There are instances, where I get a car for a week and I don't have time to find all the tech features in the car, all the
It's
gimmicks,
tough.
if you like. Yeah. And with this car, I finally experienced the car as a customer, right? So now I can really play with all the features. I find new features all the time that I'm like, was that even there before? So of course, I focus quite a bit lately on charging. I still feel like with the electric product, it's all about charging more than the range. Um, I rarely talk about the range anymore because I'm more concerned like, can I find a charging station to quickly charge it and get what I need? So I set up a test charge 2 days ago. I guess it was quite cold in Chicago. Quite cold. It wasn't that cold. It was like 50 Fahrenheit, 51. That's what? That's about, I'm trying to do the math, like 10
I
Celsius
was gonna say
maybe.
like 9, 10. Yeah, sounds about
Yeah,
right.
somewhere around that. I always do like 50 minus 32 divided by 2. That's kind of like a rough. Uh, so yeah, so somewhere around that. And and I wanted to charge it from 10 to 80% because that's really the optimal range for charging. So I had to find a charging station that was 350 kilowatts. I wanted to make sure that I get the full potential of the car, basically, because it can do 195 kilowatts. There are a bunch of 150 kilowatts charging stations, but there are also some Electrify America that can do 350. I found a charging station. Of course, it was occupied. I had to drive in this parking lot by the mall for about an hour to bring it down to 10%. And I started like around 16%, 16 or 17%. And I was like, when I'm concerned about the range, it feels like it's always going down quickly. And now I'm like, what's going on? So I was like pushing the car, like I was doing like quick sprints, with the car in sport mode. I was running the AC, the heating up like 84 Fahrenheit in the car. I was really trying to bring that down. And it took me like almost an hour of driving in the parking lot of a mall to bring it down to 10%.
It's kind of like what's
So
that old saying? A watch pot never boils.
exactly. So I bring it out to 10%. I go to the charging station. Of course, it's occupied. I'm like, great. So then I wait a little bit longer and I finally plug in and I start a test. I recorded the whole thing. I just published a YouTube video. It's fairly scientific. So I guess I wanted to show starting at 10%, I wanted to show the charging um, every 5 minutes. So I did increments of 5 minutes basically with some commentary in between. And here are some thoughts basically on that. So I guess the one thing that's interesting that I was able to go from 10 to 51% or 50% in about 15 minutes. That translates into about 100 miles of range. Of course, I mentioned in the video, it was not the optimal outside temperature. So I guess if it was a little bit in the 70 to 80 degrees area, the battery pack would have been, the thermos in the battery pack would have been even better optimized to accept the quick charge immediately. But I started like around 190, 191 kilowatts, quickly went up to 195, stayed there for a little bit, I guess like 5 to 10 minutes, and then it started to drop quickly to like 170. But what I wanted to see was really how many miles can I get in 10, 15 minutes, because that's an okay time to wait for the car to
Yeah.
charge, because you can go inside and maybe grab a drink, come out, a
Yep.
few minutes later, you can just unplug and leave. So not bad, honestly, because I feel like, 100 miles in 15 minutes in that temperature was not bad at all. But I found out that there is a new charging curve in the BMW iX. So I emailed BMW to learn more about that. So the i5 and the i7, when they came out, they had this charging curve which kind of ramps up quickly. It goes up a lot faster, and you can get more miles into the car within the first 10 minutes.
Okay.
And they rolled out this update to the iX M60 as well. And essentially, what I was told is that, let me see if I recall correctly, that you're saving about 3 minutes of charging. Um, uh, if the temperature stays in between 15 Celsius to 23 Celsius, and I guess that's the optimal range, 70 to 80 Fahrenheit. So you're saving about 3 minutes there. And then I also learned that if you're sharing let's say 150 kilowatts charging station, you have two cars plugged in, sometimes those charging stations, they cut off the power in half. So they just split the
Yep.
power between two cars, and essentially you will get 70, 75 kilowatts in your car. But if the other car disconnects and leaves, the car would never go back to the full 150 kilowatts. It would stay on the 70.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. I never thought about that. And apparently they fixed this in this new variant. So yeah, so that's one of the big updates. And there was one more, I guess. Let me see, what was the last one? Because we just wrote an article today on this. I don't remember the last one, but there was one more interesting update. I'll tell you right now. Let's see if I can find it. Something related also to charging from 10 to 80%.
I would say though, 15 minutes for 100 miles. Yeah, I'm with you. I'd say that's acceptable.
Yeah.
Um,
So here's the
like
last
you said,
update. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, you basically jump in, grab some Starbucks or something, and and go. I mean,
Mhm.
hundreds more than enough. Most people aren't going to be driving that very often. I mean,
Mhm.
30, 40 miles a day on average. So, I mean,
Yep,
that's totally
exactly.
acceptable.
Exactly. So the last update, because I'm not sure people know, but if you charge your car, you can also see the charging graph curve in your My BMW app
Hmm.
or Electrify America app, and you can see the charging rate where it starts when it starts to drop. And then you'll see by the time you reach 40, 50%, it goes down to 70, 80 kilowatts, sometimes even lower. But I guess what they've done with this one was the fact that with this new update, that it says that let's say you have a high state of charge, which BMW considers that over 40% in the battery. It says that your iX will now charge at a maximum speed for the first few minutes, even when in cold temperatures, before tapering it off. So instead of kind of trying to maintain the battery life or to
Hmm.
prolong the battery life, they're trying to give you maximum charge immediately, even if you start at a high state of charge, basically. So the goal is really there. The customer just want to plug in quickly, 5-10 minutes, get enough
Yep.
miles to kind of drive off and find the next charging station if needed. So those updates will roll out to the iX M60. I have a 2024. I'm trying to find out if this will be rolled out to maybe 2023 models, 2022. If it needs special hardware, which I don't think so. I think just a software update. So I'm actually waiting to get an update on that, on which cars will get when, what's the software update code and on all of that. But
That'd
it
be a
was
good
very
update.
interesting test. Yeah. So to summarize this, I guess I went from 10 to 80% in about 35 minutes. That's exactly what
Okay.
they said. So that was kind of what I expected. I think before it was a little bit more. It's close to like 40 minutes, 41 minutes. So definitely save some time there. But honestly, I always tell people if you get to 80%, don't use the fast charging station because the rate just drops quickly, the charging rate, and you're
Yep.
just wasting time there. I mean, I guess to go from 80% to 100%, it was showing me another 45 minutes. And I'm like, that's too long. So just unplug, plan your route, find the next fast charging station, and you're actually saving time by just stopping one more time for 15 minutes versus waiting to go from 80 to 100%. If you really need
Exactly.
to, if you really need to use all the other range from 80 to 100%, then of course just find a level 2 charging station and 50 kilowatts or lower, whatever that is,
Hmm.
and just plug in and just charge there, and you're probably going to save money too, and it's going to be the same really charging time as the DC fast charge. But yeah, very interesting one with the iX.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see over time, um, the usability of all that. Like we said last time, right? Was this one of your first times with Electrify America?
No, I've actually used it, but it was my first time. I've used it before because they have it has the 2 year free plan.
That's right.
So I tried to use it as much as possible. For this test, I didn't use it because I was afraid that's going to cut off for 30 minutes. They
Hmm.
have a 30 minutes free plan basically, and I knew it's going to take a little bit more than 30 minutes. So I ended up having to pay like $40 to do this test instead of charging for free. But I didn't want it the charge station to cut off for 30 minutes and kind of ruin the whole test.
Yeah.
So I splurged basically, and yeah, so it cost me $40 basically to go from 10 to 80%. But it was the first time that I was using Electrify America with the 350 kilowatts.
Hmm.
I only saw a couple other ones in Chicagoland area. There is an EVgo, but there is another Electrify America. So of course everybody's trying to charge there, which was interesting though because I saw some cars charging there that they're not taking full advantage of the 350. So that kind of sucks sometimes because you have these cars. I was looking at somebody that was charging right next to me. It was a Japanese car. I don't remember which Japanese car it was, honestly, but it was a smaller car. And it was only charging like at 50 kilowatts. I was like, oh man, it was just wasting all
Yeah,
this charging
I
station. Yeah,
feel as more and more come out, it's like yes, they customers kind of know, but I feel like there needs to be a better way to identify if you're fully using the capabilities of it. Like, I don't know if it should be built into the app. Be like, hey, you're not going to use the full usability of this charger. Could you please use this one? We'll give you an incentive, to not use the fast charge, right?
yeah,
Because I keep hearing these stories over and over again that it's like, well, that car can't even utilize that charging speed, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah,
it
and a lot of
feels
people
like,
don't know. Yeah,
yeah, it just feels like it's going to get, as it gets more and more out there, there needs to be some incentive or way to inform customers to not hog a fast charger, right?
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I feel like, especially with this type of installation they have there. I mean, I think there is a mix of 150 and 350 in a different location, and only one or two of them are 350. I guess they should just price them differently, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I would make the price difference significant, that whoever decides to use the cheaper version, they feel like they're really saving money on this, by maybe wasting an extra 2-3 minutes or 5 minutes
Mm-hmm.
of charging. But absolutely, I think there should be an incentive to use the slower charging, especially if you don't really need the full thing, and people, yeah, I mean, in this case, it also sucked because I could have just plugged in for 10 minutes, get enough miles in, and then leave, versus these guys or this driver, they don't know all these details, which is normal because still fairly new to
Yep.
everyone, even to us. They just sit there for like, I don't know, 45 minutes. So you're just waiting 45 minutes from someone to just kind of slowly get to 80%, versus let me charge for 10, 15 minutes, you can plug in. And so I don't know. It's a tough one. I mean, I find it more difficult now, not having the range extender, that I need to plan all of these things a lot more than before. I also learned that the i40, iX, and all the other electric cars are quite smart. I'm sure the other brands do the same thing, but you can actually set up your home location to your preferred charging station. So let's say if it's nearby your home, you can set it up that'll be your home location. So when you get closer to the charging station, it starts to precondition the battery,
Hmm.
so it's ready to accept the best charging rate basically once you get to the charging station. So that's an interesting thing I just found out. Somebody on Instagram just pointed that out, and so thank you for the tip. Was a BMW sales advisor. I don't remember that dealership name, but that's quite interesting. So I'm gonna try to use them more and more. But yeah, there are those nuances that you learn when you live with the car. But once again, I could care less about the range. I care more about, let me find more charging stations. Let me plug
Yep.
in for 10 minutes. I don't need more than that, honestly. Even 15 minutes, 100 miles. In my use case, I can use 100 miles for at least 4 or 5 days. So honestly, it's good enough. Even if it was 2-3 days, it's still pretty good for me. And I'm
Yeah,
assuming a lot of people
exactly. So,
are
I
not.
mean, 15
Yeah,
minutes so let's say for a whole week of driving around, you spend half an hour charging, like out and about. I mean, that's totally, totally acceptable to me. I mean,
exactly.
it takes, 10 minutes to get a tank of gas. So, I mean, in
Mm.
reality, that's not bad. Not bad at all.
Yeah, and I have friends that make fun of me because they see me sometimes, just being parked there and charge, and like, and I tell them, I said, those 15-20 minutes that I'm sitting there, I'm actually doing some work in the car. I can respond to emails, I can post
Mm-hmm.
something on social media, I can do a lot of things. It's not like I'm sitting in the car not doing anything, basically. So
Yep.
instead of sitting at home and doing that, I'm just sitting in my car charging and doing all of this. So most of the time, it doesn't really bother me if I'm there for 30 minutes. I'm definitely going to do something. I'm going to do some work or respond to something. So it's really not that bad. And I've seen people that just, especially in the mall areas or the mall parking lots, you can just go inside the mall, have a coffee, come back. It's totally fine. You don't always have to be on the go and rush all the time. So
Exactly, and like you just said a moment ago, like you end up planning a little bit more, and as you get more experience with it, you kind of just learn. I mean, you've owned an i3 for a long time, so you learn like which shopping centers have a charger that you like to utilize or is more likely to be free. So you end up shopping there more often.
mhm.
It's not that like you're constantly looking. You eventually learn where the best places are for you, and it just kind of just changes. That's it.
Yeah, and they're constantly evolving and adapting to this new reality of electric cars. I'll give you one more example that I did with the i4. recently. That's got a 195 kilowatts charging rate as well. And there was one charging station. There was a 150 kilowatts Electrify America. There was maybe, let's say, 2 miles away. And then there was another one that was 4 miles away. But the 4 miles away one was the 350 kilowatts. So then I started to do the math. I was like, so let's see with traffic. So it actually, it would have taken me, I remember that day, it would have taken me about 8 extra minutes to get to the 350 kilowatts charging station. I looked at them at the same time, like in the app, to see if they're open, and they're both open. And I actually drove to the 350 kilowatts one because I realized that I'm actually probably, actually, it's not a scientific test, but based on what I saw, I think I saved some time by driving to the one that was a little bit further by charging with 350. Of course, I have to account for the round trips and all of that. So maybe it's going to be a wash, like in the end. But that's an interesting test that I want to do. Actually, when I'm really going to measure the time that I'm saving by driving to a further charging station that's more capable of delivering kilowatts than the slower one. So you're constantly thinking about things like that. Before, I'll be like, I don't really care. I have a range extender. Worst case scenario, I could just plug in a couple of, just drop in a couple of gallon of gas, and I should be good to go. So I do miss my i3 from that perspective.
But that's why it's nice to have a long-term loaner, right? So now you can experiment with these and have a better input for people.
Yeah, this is really my first experience with a BMW press car or a test car that I really play around with the car. With all the features and all these things. Before, like I said, you have 1 week, you usually focus on the driving experience, on the space maybe inside the car. You touch a little bit like on the tech, but you don't really spend a lot of time talking about charging with electric cars unless you're an electric centric channel maybe, or a YouTube channel. So I'm learning quite a few things. I mean, I'm constantly searching for things like on our website today. I might have not remembered, or maybe on some forums and YouTube videos to learn more about this new reality of electric cars. And then this is actually a good segue into the next trip that I'm planning, hopefully next week. It's low week, holidays and all of that. Of course, I found myself a new project, so I plan on driving. I'm planning on fully charging the IXM60 to 100%, and then do a complete loop on the highway at 70 miles per hour, average speed, and see how many miles will I get till I get to 0%. Of course, a lot of people have done this like in the past. It's nothing new. A lot of, like I said, electric centric channels do this. Yep. But being Chicago, it's going to be a little bit coldish. So I want to see the influence on the range with cold weather. I have a good baseline because I drove the car during a road trip when it was perfect weather, like 75, 80. So now this will be a good test to see what's the difference there. So of course I have to plan on this trip around a charging station close to a highway. So when I get to maybe 1-2%, pull into the parking lot there, maybe 1%, drive around a little bit. When I get to 0%, be really close to the charging station. Because I don't know for sure. With the IXM60, someone told me that it's unclear when it goes below I guess the buffer, it's like 2% or something like that. Okay. If it goes below that 2%, if the car will be able to, if you're going to be able to put a car into the drive mode to push the car to the charging station, or you're just really not going to be able to move the car at all and you need to get a flatbed to pull it in. Of course, I can also just cut off at 10%, at 0%, and just plug in immediately, knowing that there's probably a few miles left. I've seen some videos. I think Kyle from Out of Spec did this one, where he drove on 0% charge, and I think he got about 11 miles still out of it, which is
dang.
Yeah. So that's the buffer that I said, like 2%. You're getting a bunch of warnings and all of that, but I'm probably not gonna take that chance with the cold weather and all of that. So I'll probably just, when it gets to 0%, I'll do a quick driving in the parking lot and then kind of pull in, and I'll add that caveat that maybe there is another few miles left in it.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, so that'll be an interesting test. I mean, it's gonna be boring to drive on the highway 70 miles per hour into a loop, but 5 hours later, let's see. New project.
Bring some podcasts with you.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking the other day. I saw Kyle. Speaking of Kyle, he's great when it comes to electric stuff. And Kyle, he usually video streams this on YouTube, so he does like a live stream of the entire drive and all of that. So
hey, that's kind of interesting.
Who would want to watch a 5-hour live stream showing the the odometer and all of that. It sounds a little bit
You never
wild.
know. Let's give it a shot.
I don't know. So I might have to do that. So yeah, it's gonna be a very boring drive for 5 hours. But yeah, I'll try that. I'll report on that next. And then I also
Okay.
filmed a normal review of the car, what it means to live with the car, to drive with the car, interior space, car seats, all of that. There is an interesting test that I want to do with. It's called the banana test. There is this guy out of Norway, Bjorn Test or Tesla Bjorn or Bjorn Tesla. Really, really nice guy, and he does really fantastic job with EV stuff. And he always does this banana box test, where basically tries to fit
Yeah.
as many banana boxes in the car as possible. And I might try to replicate that, or I'll try to find a. I'm still trying to figure out what's the average box or packaging box size in the US, or the most common one, like the UPS box that people use constantly. So what I can try to do that test to see how many I can fit in the car and give people a better idea of the space.
Yeah, that'd be a good
Yeah,
idea.
things like that. So yeah, that's the XM60. All right, so last topic. Let's do another 10 minutes of this, maybe. Tesla Cybertruck. So big topic, right? I mean, everybody talks about this. We've seen some fantastic videos. I
Yep.
talked to Jason Camisa. I saw him recently at the BMW event, and I told him that his Tesla Cybertruck video was fantastic. I was
It's
like,
really
this is
good.
unbelievable. And I said, it must be nice to have a huge video production crew. He's like, nope. He's like, there are actually four people shooting the whole thing, including him. So they literally have, a guy that does the drone, does multiple, video angles and all of that. So really just four people. I really thought it was like 20, 30 people, honestly, based on the production value.
Yeah, it's his. Yeah, whatever they're doing great because their videos are amazing.
Yeah. I mean, if you haven't seen this Tesla Cybertruck video, it's fantastic. I mean, the script is great. Jason is super funny, very knowledgeable.
Hmm.
Loved the video. And he also shared quite a few interesting things about the Tesla Cybertruck. So let's start with this. Tell me what you think about the car from a design perspective, technology, market fit, all of that.
Hmm. um, uh, it's not for me. I'll say that.
Okay. Okay. Why is that?
um, I, I, I'm not. I'm not one of those people that's very. I'm not flashy. I don't care what people think about what I'm have or own or drive really. So it's very much a look at me type truck to me. I do think there's some really cool technology. Obviously, some of the stuff it can do is amazing, but that's what we expect from an electric car company that's been pushing the boundaries for 15 years now. So I mean, to see that what it can do with its speed and how much it can tow and things like that. Yeah, that's what I expect. It's got some really cool features. I think for me though, what really kind of uh, maybe not like it as much, and I think everyone's pretty much touched on this, is it's not what was promised, right? 3 4 years ago, it was promised, it was like a 500-mile range at like $40,000, and now it's a typical 350-mile range, 70,000 starting. So it's like at, at first it was like, oh wow, it's a huge difference. But now it just kind of fell right into what everyone was kind of expecting. So I think that kind of took the air out of the balloon for me on that. But I think the cool, interesting part to me is I'm starting to see, and I think Camisa's videos really demonstrated it really well, is like the crash safety stuff and like how stiff that chassis is, which kind of interests me on an engineering standpoint because that's what crumple zones were all kind of, that's where we got into with all of those is cars used to not crumple. Now we've added crumple zones for like safety and passenger safety and all that. And now we've gone back to not crumpling. How's that work?
Yeah. Yeah, there is a whole Twitter thread on this. Somebody posted, and there were a lot of people chiming in and talking about this. Um, if it's a safe car or not. I'm not an expert in any of this tests, honestly. I don't know much about that. I did get into that and trying to read more and more. So there's split opinions on it. So I don't know. The jury's still out on that. Some people say that it's a lot safer this way. Some people say it's not, because look at the video test that they put
Mm-hmm.
out where you see, you know, how the passenger will be affected by that, and the driver and all of that. So I don't know yet, honestly. But apparently, I also saw the Smoking Tire podcast
Okay.
with
Yeah.
Matt
Yep.
Farah. Yeah, so it's actually a really good one. Talks about, he gets into a little bit of a beef with Jason Camisa. I mean, like, on the fun way. I think they just filmed another podcast together to kind of go back and forth on some of the topics. Very interesting one. But he was mentioning also how the Tesla Cybertruck apparently or allegedly it's not yet crash tested for Europe. So he's not sure if they can sell it there or not. So maybe just a US car, because I guess our regulation are a little more lax when it comes to that.
Yep.
So I honestly, like, I don't know much about that. I'll keep an eye on it. But that was the one thing that I got out of that podcast.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's still a lot of questions, right? It's been 3.5, 4 years, and there's still a bunch of questions. So it's just, I think that's kind of killed it for me. Where I think MKBHD, Marcus Brownlee, I think made a good statement in his videos, where like, if they would have been uh, like Apple or anything like that, and they're like, and this is available for order in like 3 weeks, like
Mm,
completely different world. Like it would have been, I think I would have been like, that's amazing, that's crazy. They have a cool design, and it's out there, and they're getting it out there. But it took all this time, and now there's all these questions and things like this with safety. And then now there's videos, coming out showing that I mean, obviously, it could be very cherry picked, but it's not very well at navigating off road situations, right? I'm
yeah,
sure
I
everyone's
saw that.
seen
Yeah,
the snow one recently with the Christmas tree.
yeah, yeah. I did see that. It was a funny interaction with the F-150. I guess it was
Yeah, where,
F-150.
where it's using a winch
Yeah,
to pull it out, which,
yeah,
I mean, coming from automotive backgrounds, we know that a lot of that comes down to tires.
yeah. Exactly.
So, like, who knows what kind of, like, it could have been on, I think it was still one of the RC candidates. So, like, could have been on some old worn tires. Who
Sure.
knows? But I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
it just, I think all the time between when it was announced and where it's actually rolling out now is what's going to be a huge detriment for this personally.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, Elon Musk or Tesla realized that it's not easy to build certain cars. But of course, I have to give it to them. And I talked to some BMW engineers off the record as well recently, and they're all impressed what they achieved. Though, I mean, there are a lot of technology advancements in that Cybertruck that will
Mm-hmm.
push other automakers to do a lot of new
Yep.
things. You know, Camisa touched on a few of them, like, steer by wire. It's one of
Mm-hmm.
them. There is this idea of a range extender battery that's extra embedded into the flatbed. So
Yep.
there's quite a few innovations in there. Definitely worth watching these videos to learn all about them. But I think it's going to push other automakers to do similar things. Also, the interior design right now is so simple; it's even more simplified than before. You still have this big tablet, but even that UI UX is a little bit different than before. So I'm curious if that's going to influence anybody else. But honestly, I'm telling you, even some BMW designers that I talked to them off the record very recently, they were impressed with the car, and they said even for design they're happy because it pushes the boundaries. It
Yep.
gives them more freedom to design interesting products, maybe not as crazy as the Cybertruck, but it just lets them have more freedom versus the typical car design. It's an evolution, not a revolution, and all of that. And then with that topic, you also mentioned the price point, right? So now it gets into a price point where it becomes a luxury pickup truck, right? So you have, the Rivian there a little bit more expensive. You have this. The question is, will any of these German automakers, including BMW, will they try to chase this new market? Will this new segment grow big enough that BMW would say one day, hey, we want to build a luxury pickup truck, of course, with the BMW DNA and all of that, and will people buy it? So that's kind of one of the topics that I wanted to talk to you about. Do you think like BMW should even consider something like this in the future?
Well, I'm here in Seattle. I see Rivians all over the place.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
So popular.
Yeah, very popular. Obviously, we get a lot of bad weather, things like that. So like, uh, we do get a lot of Subarus and SUVs around here and things like that, obviously. So having an electric luxury vehicle like that, it's filling that void. And I see multiple a day,
Yeah.
which kind of surprised me at first because I mean it's still fairly new, but I think there's a huge opportunity right there for certain markets. I definitely do. I mean, we see F-150 being the number one sold truck, and I think there is that opportunity. Rivian's kind of shown that you could have a luxury truck and get it sold. My only question is though is there are reports now of like the Lightning, like them rolling back production numbers and things
I
like
saw
that.
that. Yeah. Hmm.
So like, are they finding out something that the market really actually isn't there?
Or is it just the overall EV market kind of slowed down a
Yeah.
little bit, so it kind of cooled off? So it could be also that. But just to go back on the previous point, I feel like with the Rivian, the first time that I saw the R1T in Chicago, I talked about this actually in a previous podcast, and I think I also talked about it in some articles, and Nico did as well in the past. That I said that it's a cool car that I would buy that car only
Mm-hmm.
because it's cool, not because I'm definitely not a pickup truck guy. I'm absolutely not. I have no use for it. I will never use the flatbed or the space in the back. Clearly not. But
Yeah.
it looks so cool that I'll consider that car as a daily driver just because it's cool looking, right? And
Yep.
it's different. So I do wonder if there are a lot of people like me that they never consider this, and I mean, especially in Chicago, people that I saw them driving, there is no way they're working construction anywhere. They're just like people wearing suits, going to the office,
Mm-hmm.
and they just like the car, and I feel like I'm the same way. So when we talked about this in previous articles, we said, okay, it's not the BMW DNA to build a pickup truck. They've done a few fun projects, for like April Fool's Day and some
Yeah.
other ones as well, and they look interesting and cool. But then again, if you roll back to 2001, whenever that was, or 99, 2000, when the X5 was conceived, nobody thought that
Yep.
BMW should do an X5, right? I mean, it just seemed like crazy, right? You're going from very small, tiny cars to this big car, heavy and all of that. It's not very BMW like. So the question is, if this market keeps growing, should they even consider it, or should they just kind of wait around and see what others are doing and then trying to steal market share? I'm not sure, but with the fact that they have this new platform, the Neue Class, it gives them the opportunity to really build something that's interesting. Like you don't have to reuse an existing platform, you don't have to convert an X7 into something like that. You can really build a truck from ground up, maybe replace the iX in the lineup, because the iX I don't think is going to get a second generation from what I know. So might as well build a new product. And I would venture to say that based on the feedback that I see out there, from people and reading, that they will sell more pickup truck than they will sell the XM, honestly.
Oh, yes, I would totally be on board with that as well. Um, I would definitely start to think about it as well. I mean, we're seeing, a lot of off-roading trucks come back. You got a lot of people coming back into market with like Land Cruisers and things like that. And I think a pickup truck is definitely, especially if it's not too big, because I think that's one thing that's really you touched on a point that Rivians are kind of cool. They're a traditional, what I'm going to call a traditional size pickup compared to the trucks nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you go look at an F-150 or a Chevy Silverado, they are massive trucks,
Exactly.
and I think that's why people like you and I, BMW owners, things like that, don't buy them.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Exactly.
massive. We don't need that.
Yeah,
But if you give me
obnoxious.
like that, if like in my mind, I always think of those little Toyotas, you know, those are amazing. Those are so cool. It's so versatile, and handy. To
Yeah,
where like if BMW produced an electric one of those, it would be very tempting,
yeah,
especially like you said,
exactly.
if it was based on a new platform and well thought out. I think Rivians do a great job of not only just looking cool, but just incredibly well thought out. Like
Yeah,
any all their features, someone sat down and was like, okay, well, how can we make this useful? How can we make, there's nothing like the little tunnel in it and things like that. They utilized every space as well as they could, and
yeah.
I
It's definitely
think,
function over form design. Definitely
yeah,
function over form design for sure.
and that's a BMW German engineering type trait as well, like
Hmm. Exactly.
making sure it's performs as best as it can. So I think if it was, that mid size and well thought out like a Rivian. I
Hmm.
think you're right. I think it could be like that new X5 to where like people are like, what are you doing? But then you see them all over the place.
Exactly. And I think you nailed on the size. There is a one-off project that was done by BMW with some students on an X7 pickup truck. I just posted the photos like recently. I mean, it's an older project, but it's built on the X7, and it looks like you said, like a normal size car by today's standards. And what's nice about that, like, it's the fact that you can sell these globally, because you're almost never able to sell an F-150 in large volumes in Europe, for example. Europeans don't buy stuff
No.
like that. I mean, it's obnoxious to them for many reasons, honestly. And even the X7, it's popular, but not extremely popular there. But then again, this will be a global product, and that will have to make it that way. It's interesting to see. I mean, I know that people see the BMW. Sometimes they're not looking at the entire market, or maybe they live in a bubble, but they actually do. I mean, they're a lot smaller than people think. They do a lot of test clinics, and the executives get to drive competitors' products all the time, and they set up this workshop. So they bring multiple products in, and they look at them and they analyze them and all of that. And there is absolutely zero doubt in my mind that BMW has not looked at the pickup truck, and they definitely did. There is zero doubt in my mind. I mean, they had to look at this.
Yeah, and my brain just starts running me because they could do some really, really cool marketing sides of this, right? Like the current thing that they did with the XM and Pikes Peak. Like, how cool would it
Yeah,
be to have an M and like an IM truck racing like Baja?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it can be some wild stuff. I mean, they're always going to search for volume and all of that. And the question will come down is, what's the volume now? They always look at projects, and they green
Hmm.
light them based on the volume. How many will we need to one break even, and then how many we need to really make profit on them over 7 years of production, let's say. So the question will come down to that: what will be the market size in the next few years, and if they will assess, if it makes sense to go in there. I don't know. Very interesting. I mean, honestly, I'm torn. I'm 50-50. Like I feel like BMW should also stay true to their DNA, and not try to venture into more crazy products like the XM and all of that. But at the same time, as if you run a business and there is a growth opportunity, do you want to leave money on the table, or do you want to be there and do some products for people that actually want? Because the customers are changing,
Yep.
quite a bit, and these trucks are becoming luxury trucks. They're expensive. I mean,
Yeah.
you can price it at $100,000 pickup truck or more, and maybe you are able to sell quite a few.
That's they make all those auto manufacturers make a lot of money off the pickup trucks. You don't have all the rear seats, and there's a lot less material. Like they make money off of them. But
Yeah.
you bring up a good point, and I think a lot of people forget about this is that BMW is a massive automotive manufacturer. So like if it doesn't produce the numbers, like they're not going to make it. Like we're talking,
Yeah.
starting off the year with the Z4 and Emmanuel making a couple of thousand in sales per year. That's incredibly low numbers for them.
Mhm.
And a lot of people think, oh, a few thousand, that's pretty good. No, that's nothing.
Yeah. I mean, one of the topics that I want to focus in 2024 and 2025 quite a bit is, especially with the new factories coming online for new classes. I want to find out is if it's cheaper to manufacture EVs in the future, if they're actually going to be able to lower the cost overall producing a car, because that's going to really open the doors for future products. Because you have a really great platform, you have new batteries, more range, you're going to get the 800 volts architecture, you can charge faster, you can play around with that platform quite a bit and have different sizes and
Hmm.
all of that. No compromises. But it will come down to, is it cheaper to manufacture a new classic car versus a combustion power car? Because if it is, then the profits, I mean, the margins on BMW cars will be quite high, and then the business case will get pushed forward a lot faster.
Yeah, and I would say my guess would be yes. I mean, as we've learned, EVs have a lot less parts. There's just the number of pieces to go into them is a lot less. And I know there's a lot of talk about that right now going forward with after sales, like maintenance and things like that. There's just a lot less pieces that wear out as well. So it's just like I would assume that it would be a lot cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of the topic. I don't know. Like I said, I'm torn. I mean, sometimes I think it would be cool. Sometimes I'm like, maybe not. Just stick to what you know best and improve what you have today. And that. But we'll see. I guess the next few years will determine the
This is
trajectory,
odd.
I
We've like
guess.
swapped places. Usually I'm the
Mm.
the one that's no change, and you're the all about the new stuff. So
Yeah, I mean, it's one of yeah. I mean, I don't embrace change just for the sake of change, basically. So it has to make sense in many ways. Then again, I remember asking, BMW designers and engineers in the past, and they said that if they ever make something like an off-road, SUV or something like that, they will have to make it a BMW way, basically. So not a copy of a Range
Mhm.
Rover or a copy of something else, right? So that's the exciting part of the equation for me, right? What they could do basically with a brand new product and all of that. So I don't have the full insight into that, but it'd be very interesting. But I guess we'll just keep an eye on the Cybertruck because that's going to dictate the market. Really, I guess if this will be extremely popular, like the Model Y, then I guess you'll see a lot more
Yep,
automakers jumping in and trying to do this, and then you get to a point you're like, oh well, we're leaving money on the table, we have to do it now.
exactly.
So yeah, so they can either go the Apple way, where basically they wait for the market to get there and see what others are doing, and they do it better, or they can be the first ones out there and get that market share. So that's always a tough choice.
Yep.
All right, so I guess that was for today. A little bit over 1 hour. So I guess some really interesting topics. I guess we might take a break this month until January, and then in January we can regroup. I can talk about some CES things then. Even though I'm not going, I did cover some of the recent tech event in California, so I can go over some of these interesting technologies, and then there'll be some interesting things in January as well. Daytona 24 hours and some other cool stuff coming up. Hopefully, we drive some more cars, or you drive something in the winter, maybe like a BMW E46 with winter tires, and tell people that you really need winter tires.
We'll see what happens.
Exactly. All right, guys. So thanks for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, thanks for listening on all the podcast platforms. Once again, if you do have any suggestions for us or topics, anything that we should cover or any guests we should bring on, just send an email to podcast@bmwblog.com, or you can find us on all the social media channels and send a message, and we will get back to you. And with that being said, happy holidays, everyone, and we will see you next year.